Welcome back to Franchise Wars reaction, recap, and review of Young Justice Outsiders on DC Universe app. This time, Triptych, which is a way of saying three stories all told kind of as one. Now there's a reason for that, and this thing is written by Peter Allen David, so we've got some fun to have here. We start off with our first story, which is the Outsiders themselves, our collection of heroes, Forager, Geoforce, Halo, Black Lightning, supported by Nightwing, and we have them taking on a small group of villains who are breaking into an aircraft facility. These villains are the old Superman the Animated Series villain Livewire, who's a teenager now, Mist, a character I don't know that much about, but who can turn to Mist, the villain Shade, who's very cool and very old-fashioned, you'll see him here in the clips, and Artemis's sister, Cheshire. Now, this early fight scene is pretty good and imaginative. The main focal point, though, is showing off how powerful Shade is, because he's got probably the most flexible power set in the episode. Huh. That works.
Go ahead, zap me. Absorbing lightning's totally my thing.
You've never had black lightning before.
I feel like that's what she said joke.
Geoforce, return him now. No. I think we'll just keep him bottled for a while. Or forever. Bring him back! You have to bring him back!
Now, before the sequence ends entirely, Artemis does actually run into her sister, Cheshire, who's getting surgery for a bullet she had shot into her shoulder, and who expresses a certain distrust of herself. So that either has something to do with this episode in particular, and you'll find out why in the next segment, or something that happened between seasons, because she clearly misses Leon, does want to go see her, but doesn't feel she can trust herself around her own daughter, which is a big difference from Season 2, where she was willing to carry her daughter in like a baby knapsack while fighting ninjas alongside Red Arrow. So that's very interesting. Now, we cut away to the second part of the story, which takes place in Gotham, with a hero group from the Batman Incorporated group that Batman set up, consisting of Robin, Tim Drake, my favorite Robin, the character Arrowette, who's basically Artemis 2.0, for those of you who are only fans of the show. The character Spoiler, which is just awesome, and she's voiced by Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender, so that's also good. And my personal favorite character and the best Batgirl of all time, Cassandra Cain, a.k.a. Orphan.
I've been keeping occasional tabs on Jervis Tetch, a.k.a. the Mad Hatter. 2 weeks ago, I brought along my squad. Spoiler, Arrowette, and Orphan.
Yes!
For a Mad Hatter, he's kind of, hatless.
No hats. It's a
Cassandra
condition
Cain.
to roll.
Now, for those poor fools among you who don't know who Cassandra Cain is, she's basically a walking action sequence who's functionally mute and functionally illiterate. She can talk a little bit, but her language system in her brain is messed up. Her father, unfortunately, raised her to see violence as the only form of communication. Which means we get scenes like this.
Wait, where's Orphan?
Oh!
Did you know Tetch was really Clayface? Or just not care?
You're gonna regret that.
Now, by this point, it's kind of a, every season tradition that Clayface will confront a group of young heroes and inevitably get defeated. That doesn't quite happen this time, because this time we brought along Spoiler, who does what she's supposed to, and basically just play mind games and spoils bad guys' plans.
Is Clayface an ally of Tetch's?
They're not buddies, which means Tetch is probably controlling him.
Doesn't matter. We know where Tetch is, so forget Clayface. Let's go get Hatter.
Spoiler. Now, as you've picked up here, Clayface is being controlled by Mad Hatter, who we find out is trying to experiment in controlling some weird bald guy who doesn't talk at all during this sequence, and who does seem to be a weird focal point of the entire episode, kind of. I wonder who he could be.
Now let's test it, shall we? Raise your right hand. Very good, but too easy. Punch yourself. Hard.
So while Mad Hatter's still experimenting with the bald guy, Clayface returns, swiftly followed by the Batman Incorporated kids, who proceed to wreck up the place. Mad Hatter sets off a bomb inside to try and cover his tracks. Clayface is caught in the explosion, but survives. We get to see some more action sequences from everybody, which is very fun. And then, as they try and collect their business, they figure out that, yes, Mad Hatter escaped, as did his subject. Huh. I wonder who that could be. Anyways, we cut away to our third story, which, first you're not aware of who exactly is the star of it or what they're doing, and then this scene happens, and it's all kinds of fun.
Have I mentioned that I love this gig? Because I really love this gig. Kid, when you've been at this as long as I have, what you'll love is just getting through the day. Oh, come on. We're putting bad guys where they belong, but you can't tell me...
Sportsmaster!
I love this gig. All right, sure. Part of me loves this gig. Okay, yeah, I totally love this gig.
Oh!
Oh, terrific. A hockey puck? Really? Really?
Neither are we.
Rocket. Who is that guy? So once again, for the second time this episode, some weird guy, we don't know, this guy, the guy with the beard and the long hair, escapes, and we've gotten no background information on who he is. Except it turns out we actually have. You see, the next scene looks like it's just debriefing action being taken by the Justice Leaguers who, performed the bust. And then familiar voices start talking, and the picture starts to be filled in. Okay, who is that guy? What's happening to him?
To break and captured Abracadabra, but Sportsmaster got away with the other prisoner. Still, over the last few weeks, we've managed to cripple the Branchwater chain of metahuman traffickers.
Branchwater?
A so-called security firm owned by a series of shell companies that trace back to Stagg Industries and its majority shareholder, Simon Stagg.
Branchwater uses different methods, but is easily as bad as Bedlam.
They haven't broken up. They're all three still together. So yeah, two things here. Number one, if we've got the Stagg Industries and Simon Stagg himself, that means Metamorpho can't be far behind, and he was also a member of the Outsiders in the comics, so I'm betting he's going to show up. And number two, yeah, turns out that actually all that little dysfunction we thought about, or the secret missions that we thought weren't being shared between anybody, or the breakup between Batman and the Justice League, that's all baloney. It's all just a scheme within a scheme within a scheme. Very light-like. And then we get this explanation to reveal that apparently while making this episode, they just opened up their Christopher Nolan, matched set and just watched a bunch of movies.
Right now, I'm more concerned about Branchwater's most recent acquisition, Shade.
Oh.
Sportsmaster liberated him, turning him over to Hatter for a nanotech control injection, so that he wound up as Cheshire's mind
They
control
Christopher
stooge,
Nolan this episode.
which means he's still subject to her manipulations. Cheshire's not about to free him without significant incentive. But at least Stagg, who was responsible for turning him into a living puppet, is no longer pulling Shade's strings.
Yeah, we were watching the episode in reverse chronological order. Very fun. Now, I do want to point this out as well. I kept this entire clip because even though I didn't react to it much, you could see that Cheshire just went ahead and freed Shade without much reason. I'm thinking they still want to play her as being more of a, morally gray or morally ambiguous kind of anti-hero / anti-villainous in the show, because that honestly fits her better, and Kelly Hugh does a great job kind of finding that thin line between the two aspects. But, anyways, back to the actual story. because we're about to get a very interesting parallel discussion point here.
So this is a win?
Largely. What troubles you?
This. All of this. Between the 7 of us, we're coordinating 6 teams of heroes, none of whom know we're working together.
It's what we all agreed to, Diana. Taking a page from the Light Zone playbook to fight fire with fire.
We're kind of the anti-light.
And that's a good thing? The opposite of light is darkness.
Yeah. Our heroes have basically become a reverse light group. I mean, they even have kind of similar makeup where they all control their own little power bases. Batman oversees all of Batman Inc., with Tim Drake as his field leader. Calder oversees Justice League's Earth forces, while Diana, Wonder Woman, controls the forces in space. Magan and Nightwing both control a New Outsiders faction. And together, all of them are still freakishly powerful. It is very much a light-based situation. And do notice, whereas when we first saw the light, it was in this, giant computer bank with these blazing silhouettes. Here, we went very much with a kind of shadowy entrance for their new opposite number. Now, I know they're probably not going to call themselves the Dark or the Darkness here, but I'm going to go ahead and use that as kind of a shorthand for any time we see them again. Because it is a very interesting idea to kind of go with this idea of these, disparate groups that have their own little, apparently autonomous issues, but are actually all united under one single focus. Also, I can't help but notice, this does kind of put, say, Batman in the seat of being the Vandal Savage of the group, which is an interesting comparison. Now, I have one more prediction before I end this episode, and that's that if you have all these little groups separated, eventually you're going to have infighting. The Light themselves experience this. I mean, we've already seen that at least one member was kicked out previously. Looks like Ra's al Ghul resigned. We've seen their different agents attack each other. There's going to be something like that with the heroes this season. If you like this episode, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.